formative assessment on your background knowledge of what you know or you don't know about the rotational model and some components of the rotational model. And one of the things that I just want to start off with is we talk a lot about this personalized learning and individualized learning, and hey, let's face it, our goal is that we are personalizing or individualizing instruction, and how do we get there? There's many models out there. So we hear of flipped learning, we hear of the flex model, lab rotation, we also hear of this rotational model, and we also hear of this personalized learning. So what's that? And I think what Ken and I have kind of come to the conclusion is like the rotational model has some really great structures in it that helps teachers get from, so here we are as a traditional teacher, stand and deliver, and very teacher-centered.
Teacher-centered,
right?
Yeah, right.
And then we go to the rotational model, and you're kind of stepping up now where we have these different groups, 3 groups, where students are rotating between these different groups. And we're moving now to kids are working more at their own pace, more independently, and we're also, there's some structure in there. And then we say, well, then what's personalized learning? Well, that's clear up here. So this is kind of like our stepping ladder.
Our journey, our
right?
It's
our stepping ladder to get us to that personalized learning where kids are everywhere, have their own choice when they're going to master standards, how they're going to master standards, based on their interests. So we're really talking about kind of stepping teachers from that teacher-centered classroom to more of a student-centered classroom.
Because let's face it, that's a huge jump, right? So experiencing from stand and deliver to a totally student-centered classroom. So we really are looking at this as here's your stepping stones towards that model.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of our teachers that have been doing this for like 4 and 5 years now, they're moving into personalized learning, and it actually is pretty amazing. I have an awesome 5th grade teacher right now where her students are doing all different things, and they're pretty much working independently, and she just pulls them when she needs them. She could not have done that in year 1. So having that rotational model with those structures has allowed her the opportunity now to kind of move more in that direction.
Well, and as you said, and you really focused it in the beginning and saying this is not this pilot thing that we were doing is really a strategy that we want to employ, right? So it's not this technology focus, even though we put that focus on the technology because we're leveraging the pieces of the technology to be able to make it happen. But it's not that focus entirely on this technology. It is an instructional strategy that can be used in the classroom, like many other strategies that we have that we've learned throughout all these years, right? But it's this strategy that we can employ to be able to really level up what we're doing in the classroom.
And the technology, as Ken said, it's not, we're not focused on that, but it does allow us to get quick data back, right? So if we do a formative assessment like we did with you, we can see then, well, where are our students and how do we want to remediate or extend our students based on that formative assessment? One of the things I always say when we're doing these formative assessments with students is, you get that data back. Just because 7 kids didn't get the material, you don't review for the whole class, right? So this is allowing you now to work with those 7 kids that might be having difficulty. So using that technology to get that quick data and be able to make changes on a dime, right?
So let's focus a little bit on those 3 particular modalities of learning. You had to answer questions about what goes on direct, what goes on independent, what goes on in collaborative. Colette, when we say direct, what comes to mind to you first off?
Definitely not teacher giving a lecture. And that's probably the big misconception, because you hear direct and you think, that's
lecture station.
That's where we're going to lecture. One of the things we don't want to do in the direct station is stand and deliver a PowerPoint to the 3 different groups. That station should be very dynamic based on the kids that are sitting in front of you. So, if you have a lower level group in the very first rotation, that's where you would actually probably do more of that instruction, and you might have to do more hand-holding to get them to understand the content. But when your next group comes to you, the collaborative station comes up to you in direct, you're not going to be doing the exact same thing that you did with the very first group, because the collaborative group was already working with something with the content that you're teaching. So now this would be the time to get them moved up on the blooms, right? Or Webb's depth of knowledge. Now we're going to start to ask them questions and compare and contrast, right?
So that should be the red flag. If you realize you're saying the same thing to 3 different groups, you know, what's the point? You could do that in whole group instruction. The point here is what you're going to pull in for that direct that's going to be uniquely different each time that the group comes up to you and each group that comes along the way.
Yeah. What about independent?
Well, you know, I think the thing that comes to mind right away is it's the easiest station to differentiate.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we say that is because of those content providers. So that independent station is an area for us to be able to use the instructional content providers and the skill-based content providers. And there's a slew of them, free and paid for, right, that we can be able to use. But the idea is that students really are working at their own pace through a learning path.
Does that mean that they always have to be on the computer, though?
Not always on the computer, and that's where we say that it's not a tech initiative.
Yeah.
Think of all those amazing independent activities that we can do without technology, right? So tech goes down, what do we do? Wi-Fi goes down, what do we do, right? So we're talking about that journaling, we're talking about reading, we're talking about writing, we're talking about some of those independent practices, even maybe reflection. And time to think about what they're learning and how they're learning. So there's a variety of activities that we can do in independent. But teachers do say that the hardest station that they have to focus on is collaborative.
Yeah, and teaching kids to learn to work together is tough. Kids aren't used to being teammates and working together collaboratively. And really that station is not a station where they should be just working on worksheets. Could they work in partners on a worksheet? They could, right? But we really want to think of that.
It's pretty low level.
Yeah, we want to think of that as our highest level on Bloom's and Webb's depth of knowledge, where they are doing that creation and collaboration and communication and creativity. So that's our highest order thinking station. It's the authentic projects relating to the real world, things that really matter, and kids are making some really good problem-solving decisions.
Right. So you'll have the opportunity to be able to view some more specific activities that can be done in direct as well as independent and collaborative to really understand how to leverage these modalities of learning the most effective way possible. The thing that we want you to remember the whole way through this journey is we want you to create a student-centered classroom.
Yes.
That's our focus.
That is
and
our
what we're
focus.
trying to do here.
Relinquishing control.
Absolutely.
Right? Stepping
That's the
back.
hardest one for many.
Stepping back, right? Being a control freak, I hate to admit it, but I'm pretty much was a control freak in my classroom. This model, you need to step back. You need to let kids learn to be independent learners. And a lot of teachers will say to us, well, they're always asking questions. They're always raising their hands. What do we do in that situation? You create a classroom that or classroom culture that students learn that, you know what, I need to learn how to figure out some things on my own, right? So you need to push them to actually learn things on their own, and it's not always the teacher giving the knowledge, right?
So you're going to learn many different aspects and strategies and resources, and we just ask you to stay open. Stay open to what you see, what you experience. We have a lot for you, and you can't take it all in at once. So take it in strides, piece by piece, element by element, as you continue through this journey with us.